This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the March 28th meeting of the Easthampton Energy Advisory Committee. I am Jamie Paquette, current chair of the committee. Welcome everybody. It hasn't been that long since our last discussion for some of us, but good to have you all here. This is the first time I think we've ever had this many people from the committee all together, so it's really great, and really grateful for all of you and the time that you're putting in to this. I think we have some really great things happening and potential for more. So let's see real quick, Scott, I don't know if you've had a chance to do minutes from our meeting. Was that a week and a half ago or so?
I just finished them this afternoon. I can email out the PDF while we're meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I don't know if we have too many controversial things to review or approve from that. For the couple of those of you that weren't here, we did sort of a special meeting in between that was around some stuff around school bus electrification that was a little bit timely. So we kind of called a quick snap meeting just to discuss that. We'll have some updates on what's going on with that in a minute.
Minutes sent.
Minutes sent. Okay.
I think I got everybody. I added Misty to the list, so I think that's everybody.
Great. So do we have a motion to approve those minutes that we haven't had a chance to review them yet? Am I violating protocol by doing that? I don't know how this works. Yes, Marin shaking his head. Marin's much more seasoned with the protocols than I am. So, all right. So maybe should we table that?
Yeah, I think it's not a problem. Just waiting till next week. We don't have to approve every meeting for the previous meeting.
Right on. Okay, so we'll push that to the next time around. We'll do that meeting and this meeting all at once. See, we don't have any sort of general public members here, but anybody have something they'd like to bring up for public speak at the moment? All right, then we'll move on to the next part. Just a quick member update. Just officially welcome back Misty Altizer, rejoining the committee for some time away. So really happy to have you here. And I think that again, there's currently 6 of us on the committee, and really excited to have the full contingent represented. Move on to the next piece, reading off the agenda here, which is update on municipal aggregation. The main update there is that working through the language and the sort of couple edits that we gave after the meeting at the beginning of March, after having reviewed that with Good Energy and our own sort of thoughts on that. So we'll need to I don't think there's anything too controversial in terms of like the changes we made. So we're just going to be trying to get that, make sure that's finalized. We may send that out real quick via email for any further comments. But the main part is that next week, the next city council meeting, which is on April 6th, we are planning to have this introduced as new business, which I will be there to represent the committee. You all are welcome to join that as well. Have it introduced as new business, and then that way it can be referred to the proper committee within the city council. So probably do some quick talking points around it, sort of introduce the concept as well as kind of how it works, so that those council members who aren't as familiar with it will have some background, the ability to ask some questions, maybe put it together as a quick PowerPoint slide presentation, borrowing some of the materials that we've had and have been given over the past year or so that we've been talking about this. So we'll present that. It'll get again pushed to the proper committee within the city council for debate, approval, where we'll go back to the full council, either the next meeting in April or possibly into May, depending, for the full council to deliberate and potentially approve. So that is pretty exciting that we can get that sort of teed up for I think hopefully approval. we'll see what sort of questions and come back out of that process. As I mentioned before, we have discussed with the mayor, and she is broadly in favor of this. So we also, it was nice to have the updated information that DPU is moving faster on these now. It started trying to clear some of that backlog there, so we actually can maybe see some hope to get this done in a reasonably timely manner. So that's what's happening with that. Any questions, Scott?
This could be a social media update, but folks on the Easthampton group page on Facebook were complaining about their electric bills and said, when is the city going to do something about? So I got to say, hey, your friendly EAC is working on a municipal aggregation proposal, and it's about to go to your city councilors. So let them know you support this program. And so hopefully, maybe there will be a little additional public momentum behind it.
Yeah, that's great. I think everyone's very mindful right now of rising utility costs and gas and everything else. Inflation is certainly a word that's being kicked around a lot, and we're seeing it happen in lots of different places. So increasing the choices that people have certainly seems like a good option, especially something that is something that's being dispatched broadly versus everyone just sort of having to go and figure things out on their own. So that's great, Scott. I'm happy to hear that. I have another idea of something that I'll bring up in a little bit as well, sort of outside this, or something that we might take on around that as well. Cool. And yeah, certainly as we get things going to the council, a post about, what's going on with that on our social media page. It seems like I did get a notification from Facebook that several hundred, maybe 800 people or so had seen or engaged with our page at some point recently. So that's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
John, you had something?
Yeah, I just lost my screen, but I think you can hear me. Yeah, I was just wondering if the presentation to the city council you're making on April 6th, is that likely to be less substantive than the presentation to a subcommittee later?
Right. Yeah. What we'll plan to do, I'll have to back in my email chain, but yes, will be a little more substantive with the subcommittee. We'll be invited. We'll show up for there and then go into more detail with that. The first one's going to be just kind of a broad overview. Okay. But we'll be prepared, to answer any and all questions at any of those, the first council, the subcommittee, and then the full council again. So, and again, it's great that we have, a few counselors involved in this process right now that can help, speak to some of these things and bring it to their colleagues and all that. So.
Do you know if those are going to be in persons? I heard rumor about in-person meetings of committees and boards starting in April or something. Is that right? Anybody know?
I don't know.
I might be able to speak to that.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but I think yes. So, I don't know, maybe Connie might know better than I even, but.
Yeah, city council is going to be back in person, but it is going to be hybrid so that community members can still participate. And I think there's possibly one or two city councilors who are also still wanting to come to meetings virtually just for their own safety, et cetera, but they will be in person.
So starting with the April 6th meeting next week, we'll be in person. Okay.
When do we get to be in person?
Once the city says it's okay and they make a meeting space available to us.
Yeah.
I think that was the question I had, was for this committee. I don't know that there's a requirement to be hybrid, but it could be up to us or what you guys want to do. If you want to stay virtual or go in person, but it might be that you just have to go to in person. I'm not sure. So that's something, not all of the boards and committees are going straight to hybrid first. Mm-hmm. So I think this one might fall and has more flexibility, which would be nice, hopefully.
Yeah, I think part of it is, right, they've seen this increased engagement from people with the remote option, right, and they don't want to lose that. I know that was something that came up in the open meeting law training, talking about stuff like that, and fact that it is more equitable in some ways, to be able to have that option. Now, there's other issues that come up around that versus like the experience that people have that are in person versus those that are remote, and those are things you kind of have to work with. I've dealt with this a little bit in my world of the soccer association, because we've been hybrid. We've had some hybrid meetings, we've had some in person, we've had a lot of remote, and we're moving back to an in-person meeting later today for the first time in a while. So we're going to see how that goes. I'll have a little practice with that at that point, see what happens. Well, we can talk about this a little bit more right now. Does anyone on the committee feel strongly one way or the other for having, in person or remote or hybrid?
For me, I think it's convenient to be able to continue doing it remote, or hybrid. And, I don't object to folks being in person who want to, but I would love for there still to be a remote option. I'm almost at the end of the fencing season, so life is going to become a little less crazy, but through the fall and winter, being able to just hop onto a meeting and then, be out the door to practice just feels a little less hectic. So between getting home from other jobs and, all that kind of stuff. So I personally like the remote option.
I agree. If there are people who really feel strongly about meeting, in person, I would like it to still be hybrid, which I would imagine gets more complicated in terms of having a space to meet in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the technology that you need to have available to
Right.
you, make sure that that's working. So, I'm fine with remote. I love, in person. As many of you, I haven't really got to meet in person, which
It would be nice to meet everyone in person once.
Yeah, we could do one.
we do one. But I'm happy to push to keep, either doing it even fully remote if we can, if that's more convenient for everybody. It's easier to run it fully remote or fully in person. Like, the hybrid, does get complicated, but I guess we'll see. Do we know, is the city putting that out to all the committees and everything at this point, or?
I don't really know, unfortunately.
I had heard this through my partner, who's just now became a member of the Community Relations Committee, and they had heard announced something about committees going live in April. But there was qualifications about hybrid options, and don't know if the technology and the meeting space limitations are going to prevent many of the committees from doing that. I guess we should just.
So guys, there was if I can just speak, there's a press release that was put out by the mayor's office. I'll forward it around to everybody in this, and you guys can look at it.
Okay.
Is it very specific?
Yeah, it pretty much says we should be back in person, I think. So,
Okay.
But maybe there's, I think there's some way to look at different spaces and room arrangements and those options. So, but I'll forward it around.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we have, being at the end of the month, we'll have some time between now and April to sort of review that, see how it's going, and make a decision from there to the extent that we can. We have a decision to make. I guess we'll see what's allowed. So Maren, thanks for that. I have not seen anything myself, so appreciate it.
I would think there's always the option for people to join meetings by phone. That's how we used to do it. If you couldn't come to a meeting that you were supposed to be at, you would be there on the phone in the middle of the table.
Right. Yeah. The old conference thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
I'm old.
Yeah, right. Discussing the technology from a couple decades ago. To that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amy?
Yes, John.
Jamie, while we're on the subject of procedures and meetings, and are we going to go over? I'm trying to pull up the agenda at the same time here so I can look at the screen and the agenda. But do we have a space on the agenda to talk about the open meeting training? Because I have a question. In the beginning of it, they said something about if you're a committee that's just plays an advisory role to a town official or another board or committee.
Mm-hmm.
As I recall, they were saying, maybe I wasn't listening completely, but that the subsequent rules and instructions about deliberations and all that publicity did not apply. Anybody remember that portion right at the beginning of the training where they talked about committees that are advisory? Or is this on the agenda for later? We can talk.
It's not on the agenda for later. We can certainly talk about it now, and I'll mention to Misty, since I'm not sure if she's seen that. One thing that the state and the city are having, requiring all members of committees and boards to go through a refreshed open meeting law training, and the state has.
You anticipated my question, Jamie, because I need somebody to forward me that.
I will forward it to you.
Thank you.
Set up a bunch more options for April and May. It's all online. Done by the Attorney General's office. So
great, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. So John, I don't know, and that so those of you who have not done it yet, maybe keep an eye out for an ear out for that, I guess, as you're going through. It is an interesting question. There's what constitutes deliberation and what is allowed in offline form, especially now that we're doing so many things via Zoom. What's allowable and what's not. Certainly we want to err on the side of caution with anything that might run afoul of that. But if anyone has anything concrete to add to that, be good. All right, so we'll check back on that next month as well. I'll make a note to add something on that to the agenda, and if maybe there's some other sources we can seek out some clarification on that as well. So next on the agenda was updates on the solar ordinance. I think last time we talked about Jamie Webb had mentioned the solicitor sort of telling the city to put the brakes on that process for now because of some things going on at the state level. There was also going to be some discussion with the Agriculture Commission at their most recent meeting. So I know, John, you had dug up some info on that court case, or we're looking into that thing that particular to bring to this right now with that.
Did anybody read that? I passed you that document from the court case. I don't know if anybody read it. It's like 60 or 100 pages long or something, but you can cull or glean the essentials of it, I guess. I don't know what the schedule is. Maybe somebody knows the schedule for that being heard. How imminent it is, I don't know, but it looked to me like
hey John, I'm sorry to interrupt really quickly. I'm sorry, John, this is Mayor. Jamie, it sounds like Barbara's trying to get into our meeting.
Oh,
is there some people in the waiting room?
There are. I'm sorry. That's my
okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, John.
No, that's all right.
Oh, well, yeah. Great. Yeah,
that's all right.
Thank you, Maren.
The Waltham case, I don't know if people knew, was a case of I guess it was a Tracer Lane Realty company, maybe partnership with a solar company, had a parcel of land in Lexington right on the border of Waltham that was where they were going to put their solar facility, but it was landlocked. It didn't have any frontage so they could get into it. So they bought a residential property on the border across from that property where the solar was going to be sited, and wanted to get approval for a roadway, the main in and out egress of that for the solar facility, and the city rejected it. They had other places where solar was allowed, but they rejected in that it was a non-allowed use in a residential zone to set up a road through it, and they got sued by Tracer Realty or whatever. They had their decision appealed to the land court. The land court sided with Tracer Realty, and then the city of Waltham appealed to the Mass Supreme Court. And but it looked to me, what do I know? But they made a pretty good case in this document appealing to the land court. Waltham did that. They complied with, what is it? I can't remember is it chapter 40A? It's the 40A sections that talk about solar siting and prohibit prohibitions on solar facility siting. that they complied with it because they did not unreasonably restrict the siting of solar facilities. They allowed it as of right in an industrial area. They allowed it by permit, special permit or variance in commercial zones. And they allowed it as an accessory use for commercial and residential areas. So it seemed like they really blasted the case that, you know, the realty company made to the land court and the land court decision. So it'll be interesting to see, and it'd be interesting to hear what our planning department and Cassie's Conservation Commission, right? Not okay. What our planning department people think about our standing relative to the arguments that were made against the city of Waltham, you know, where our current and future proposed zoning, you know, that relates and correlates. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, and my understanding is the planning board, or planning in that board, people in the planning department are kind of waiting to see, you know,
Right.
what is the case, what is the resolution of the case, and then we might, you know, I don't know if that will change the ordinance at all, or if we will still go forward with it, or I don't know what will be the result of that. But it's hard to say when they're going to have the decision come out. Could be months, seems like.
Yeah. It's interesting reading. Did you pass that to the whole committee? I don't know. I sent it to you, and I can do that, or you can do that.
Yeah, you can feel free to send it to the committee. I think I had shared like the news article that I saw about it.
Yeah, right.
Well.
Yeah, I remember reading something about it, but I don't think I got anything from John. So
yeah, I didn't get into the 60 to 100 page level. I think yeah.
That's fine.
Right. Stuck with the high level, like news level stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it would be, you know, it does have implications, of course, statewide and as well for us. And Cassie, were you at the Agriculture Commission meeting where the dual use was discussed?
I was not there.
Okay. And then anybody, I don't think anyone from our committee ended up being able to attend. Right. So, if anyone, I don't know if if the minutes from that meeting are posted already, but maybe worth somebody checking in just to see if there was anything, you know, useful from that worth bringing up here. Certainly, you know, dual use is becoming, you know, getting more and more press and interest these days, and there's even, you know, I think companies trying to create special, you know, panels that are specifically for sort of dual use type applications, and finding ways to really make that more attractive. So it's great that, you know, the Agriculture Commission is addressing that directly as well. All right, well, we'll you know, see if there's any updates between now and the next meeting, basically from the Agriculture Commission or with the state court case. But right now it seems like everything's just kind of with the work on the ordinance. Nothing's going to change on that for the time being. All right, to the Green Community Grants proposals and reports, Cassie.
Yeah, so nothing to update with the report. I submitted all the corrections that they requested. There was only 3 of them. And I haven't gotten confirmation yet that they're like, okay, this is good. They don't want anything else. My guess is that it is good. The 2 corrections were really small, and one of them was actually an error on their point. So I think it should be probably good to go, but I haven't squared away like a good way to visually represent that for a social media post. I know, Scott, you were interested in that. So I haven't quite figured that out yet. And I do want to have like 100% clear that yes, the report is accepted and good, but I can reach out to them again to see, like, is there anything else you need? But then for, you know, the next report, it's still early to be working on that. For the grant for the Teslas, the next step is that Chief Alberti is going to make an appropriations request for the city council at some point. I don't know if it's for this meeting at the 6th. I need to figure that out, but I think potentially not. Or if, I don't know when that will come about. But we did get, you know, the contracts and everything from the state side of stuff is done. So they gave us the go ahead to go forward.
Yeah, and the appropriations request gets made once it's approved, then the purchase is made and the grant is applied towards that at that point.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty straightforward. There is an element of, doing some training with the police officers who are going to be using it, making sure they know everything about the vehicle, but also giving them potentially like materials. If they take the Tesla to like a public event and then have it, sometimes they have like a police vehicle like kind of posted around. If they use the Tesla, maybe some outreach materials like, hey, electric cars are cool and here's why, something like that. And then I'm currently working to touch base with the chief of police in Ipswich, who they're the only other community that has Teslas in their fleet, their police fleet. I think it just is one that the chief uses. So I don't know if they're use it in the same capacity that we're planning to use ours, but still, I think it'll be really helpful to get their perspective on how it's gone, any notes they have about it. But him and I have been playing phone tag recently, unfortunately. So I haven't touched base yet.
But the rest of the state, there's not really any other police departments that are doing this?
Well, there are like I don't know about police departments that are electrifying, but people are looking into it. But in terms of explicitly a Tesla in the police force, Ipswich is the only other one, as far as I know.
Interesting. That seems like something we could publicize as well, from a being on the leading edge of things kind of standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think it's like the Tesla. The reasoning behind the Tesla for the police force was that the Tesla meets those performance standards that they really need for their vehicles that maybe some other, like the Leaf might not be able to do. I don't know. So yeah, it is pretty cool.
And refresh my memory, is there a charging station going in at the public safety complex as well? Or are they going to be using the ones at 50 Payson or?
My understanding is they're going to put one in at this public safety complex. It's not something that's part of the grant that we've applied for. And the reasoning being is that if you wanted to get it through the grant, it has to be publicly available for public use. And the safety complex is like, well, we don't really know if we want to have it. We want it to be available for us because we're going to need to make sure these are ready to go. Mm-hmm. So we wasn't something that you can get through the Green Communities grant.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just the vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's again something that we could help publicize. I don't know if they're going to have like a sort of a marketing campaign or a publicity campaign around that once the purchase is gone through and delivered.
I'd like there to be, because I think that's part of like the outreach element of it that I talked about in the grant. Was it matters for people to see it and to see them around. So
yeah, it does. I mean, the electric cars, of course, are becoming more common. We're seeing more charging stations around the city and elsewhere. The infrastructure is starting to catch up, which is great. But as we'll talk about with the school bus electrification thing, there is still kind of this like lack of general knowledge, I think, in some ways, or just even like conceptually, like this is something that we could do, kind of thing. It just
it's also really important to push the fact that we got a grant to spend the money. Mm-hmm. So people get very weird about what are we buying Teslas for? Well, we got a grant. That's why we're doing it.
That's good. Yeah, that the state kicks in. That's always a good selling point, is that we're able to leverage those dollars for stuff. I mean, things that we're going to need to do anyway, but also like we can go above and beyond, and like get like the best possible outcome through those sorts of partnerships and grants. That's a good point. Okay. Anything else with that at the moment, Cassie?
Nope, that's all I've got for now. I know that we're thinking about other grants in the future, but we have to close this one out before we can go for the next one. So to me, it's kind of on hold, but I'm, other grant things, I'm really interested in this electric bus situation. So might be more to talk about that.
Okay.
So are we going to talk about other ideas today, or are we going to post?
We are. Yep. Yeah, that's, we can, do you have something you want to bring up now? We can certainly talk about it.
Well, I one of the things that I went to the latest list of grant proposals that were accepted, and let me see if I can get this to open up here. Worcester got they got over $852,000 to fund a residential stretch code implementation program that provides grants to property owners to upgrade existing buildings to meet the performance requirements of the Stretch Energy Code and to fund an outreach campaign to market the program and educate residents. I thought that this grant was just for municipal stuff, but that sounds like it's a grant that would give money to residents, which I'm confused by. But it also makes me wonder what exactly they would be willing to fund, because they gave them a huge amount of money for this. So that was one question that I had about it. But then I also was wondering about the library and the senior center, whether, you know, are there any things we can do about energy conservation in terms of those two buildings? I don't know what's already been done, but that was one place that seems like we might be able to get some grants. And also I was wondering about the bus that the senior center uses. I know they have a bus, and whether it could get a grant to make that an electric bus. So those were the things that I was thinking about.
No, that's good. I like those ideas. And I know too, to bring this back in, Cassie, you mentioned the last time sort of the Northampton, the Columbia Gas settlement money and what that's going towards. So I don't know if there's been any updates on that as well since the last time.
No major updates. They were, you know, because it's kind of in what is his name? Chris Mason over at Northampton. He's still working to kind of get this draft plan going. Be the main thing that we're going to like work off of. But we did decide, you know, maybe it'd be worth it to look into, you know, what are the amount of renters in our community and the amount of landlords, and then the demographics of both, and how that potentially could inform the plan. Just because, you know, you guys had mentioned before, like it would be really interesting to get at, you know, these kind of more rental facilities where the individual, you know, renters it's not within their capacity to change the heating, you know, of the building, but the landlord may have that capacity. And maybe if we supported them, then it's like you're helping impact a lot of people's lives. I don't know. It still definitely is pretty amorphous, but it's kind of starting to hone in a little. So I'm working to try to get that data at least for the next meeting.
Okay.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, of course.
I know they were working on a draft. I think I'm reading through the notes from last time. A draft that you were going to get and share once we have that. I guess once they've kind of come up with that on the Northampton side.
And I just have a quick question. I haven't been in a while, so maybe you guys can help me understand a bit. What's the mechanisms for identifying appropriate grants? Is that designated to someone? Is that an initiative that's formalized somehow?
That's a good question. On the green community side, I mean, that stuff sort of predates my involvement here. It seems like that's something that's just kind of ongoing, right, Cassie, is that through the planning department or the conservation?
Yeah, it's been to the planning department, and I know Maren was helping with it or doing it for like a really long time. And now once I became full-time, there seemed to be an opportunity that could be something that could be rolled into my responsibilities. Because when I first started, I was just the Conservation Commission, you know, making the meetings happen and the permits and things. When I became full-time, I kind of started to take on more this green communities thing. As it stands now, you know, I did their last report and plan to kind of keep doing that. So green communities wise, it's me, I guess I'm the main staff person now. But for other grants, I don't know that there is a formal, you know, it's, as we find things, it kind of is like, who is the appropriate person to take this on? Is it a staff member? Is it, I don't know if it would make even sense, or if anyone would have the time in the actual committee to take it on, or I have no idea what's appropriate.
I mean, I have some time, I can take some of it on, but I just would need some direction on where I'm hunting for things. And it might be more than what, I might be biting off more than what one person can do, but I'm happy to tackle some of that. I just, especially if we think that there's money out there that we're just letting pass us by. But I don't know what the committee thinks, what your general overall sense has been and what your experience has been, if that's the case, or are we really combing things to get the money?
Yeah, I don't think, no, we haven't been doing it in any sort of formalized or even just strategic way to this point. I think it's sort of, you know, as things come across our field of vision, you know, we'll bring stuff up here. Obviously, the planning department does quite a bit of that for their stuff, but that's not all energy focused, of course. Theirs is much, could be much more, whether it's like Union Street or some of the other things that they, bike paths and some of the other stuff that they work on. But if there are opportunities, we can certainly be more systematic and then have somebody or even all of us in some level out there looking for things or just trying to see what might be possible.
Do you guys have a sense that we are missing out on some money or not really, or would that be a worthy use of, committee member time?
I think it's worth, with the federal, I can never remember the acronym, but the federal infrastructure money hitting the states and them turning around and funneling that back. In fact, that was one thing we had talked about once before, Jamie, is to find out whether the mayor and whether the planning department was kind of on top of knowing where that funding was going to be funneled from and for what types of projects. I remember there was a emphasis on wastewater treatment plant improvements in energy and otherwise in that funding source. But I think there might be some logical places to look and to just determine whether there might be some eligibility for the things we're thinking of. And I'd provide some help if that was more than a one-person effort, Misty.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I might just send some folks here on the committee some individual emails pointing me where I need to look for things. So yeah, John, okay. I'll fold you into that.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, the more ideas we can bring back here and discuss and see, recommend whether it's to the mayor, to the council, to the planning department, whoever might be able to benefit from it. That's our role. We're advisory, but we can certainly come up with ideas and get things started.
I have one more thing to discuss related to the green communities, and that is the fact that the stretch code is going to be rewritten and it's going to be much stricter. And it's also something that cities and towns are not going to be required to adopt. They have to opt into it. And I would like to see the Energy Advisory Committee advise that the city opt into the new stretch codes. So that's something I'd like to bring up now, and maybe we can discuss it another time. Especially it'd be good to discuss it. We know what they are, what they're going to be, but they're supposed to be, very strict and very different than they are now. We'll see what they end up writing, but the city will need to decide whether or not they're going to adopt them at some point.
And that would be adopted through which part of the city, do you know?
I assume the city council would ultimately have to agree to it. I don't know for sure, to tell you the truth, but that's my assumption, that it would have to be the city council ultimately that would make that decision. Do you know, Cassie?
I don't know who would make the ultimate decision. I do know that right now it goes through the building department. They make sure people are in compliance with the stretch code. And I do remember
community, we were required to do that when we became a green community. That will no longer be the case once they do the new stretch codes. So at some point along the way, the city will have to either say, we are going to do this or we're not. And, Connie, do you know what? I would think it'd be the city council. I don't know.
I mean, if they're codes and ordinances, then the city council, I believe, would have to play a role in that if we're changing kind of ordinances.
Yeah, I think so, ultimately. But I would like to see us support that opt-in.
Yeah, and that's certainly something that we could do, again, at a city council meeting, have a representative there to recommend that.
Right.
Whether it's, if there's certain language or whether it has to be a proposal or whatever it might be, the adoption of the specific resolution or something like that. That would be great.
Okay. I'll find out more about that. I know it hasn't been rewritten, and I'm sure it's going to be very difficult to get agreement on the new language because it's going to be very strict. But I'll see where I can I can try to find out where they are at this point in rewriting it. My guess is nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know anything. So the more you can find out and bring back to us.
All right.
Well, and just a point of clarification on the stretch code. I mean, the stretch code is basically has always been set up so that it would be sort of 3 years in advance of what the current code was. So it was always being, the ante was always being moved up. The goalposts were always moving, just like every code is going through transitions every 3 years. The stretch code was just intended to be already at that next 3-year goalpost now. Okay. And so, but then that kept moving as we keep moving forward. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by it's going to become much stricter. But I think that there is an intention for it to, again, be moved up to the goalpost that would be 3 years in advance of what the current building codes are. And yes, we probably are moving to try to have a little bit better building codes with all of the energy efficiency measures that are trying to be passed across the country.
Well, my understanding was that the the legislation that got passed this year, that the sort of big omnibus energy bill, included language about rewriting the stretch codes to net neutrality, and that there was a deadline, I think, at the end of this year where it had to be rewritten. When it would be put into effect, I don't know. But my understanding was that was part of that legislation, that it had to be rewritten by the end of this year, 2022. I can find out about that because I remember reading about that. I'm sure I can find something about that. Okay. But you know a lot more about this than I do, Maren. But that's all I'm referring to is that big legislation that was passed at the beginning of the year. But I'll look into it, and whatever I find, I'll send out to you guys.
Okay. And I want to circle back to the things you were asking about at the beginning of this part of the discussion too, which was the bus for like the buildings, right? The Council on Aging building.
Yeah.
What was the other one that you mentioned?
The library.
The library, and then the bus as well for the Council on Aging owns, and like what the, I guess, procurement process, or who's in charge of that if we were to like go down that road of like wanting to push them, who would we talk to about that, or how we find out where they are, and how much, I guess, how much longer they intend to use their current model, that sort of thing, be the type of thing we'd want to know. I think as we've learned with the school bus thing, we unfortunately found out the information we wanted. We were a little too late in the cycle to have too much of an impact right now. But as far as those buildings go, if there are specific projects that could fit a grant, efficiency or whatever, that would be worthwhile to push forward as well.
So the city doesn't own, I just assumed the city owned that bus. Is
it a bus or a van?
The van, it's a van. It's a van.
Okay.
Yeah. Doesn't the city own it? I don't really know anything about it.
So that would be my assumption, but again, like I didn't know the shape of the school bus contract either until we started looking into it. So,
well, I would be more than happy to get in touch with the library and the senior center and just to ask that basic question, where those two buildings stand in terms of ideas about making them more energy efficient, and what the story is with the van. I'm sure those are questions that wouldn't be too hard to get answered.
Right. Yeah, because I had heard that the Council on Aging was maybe considering moving out of that building somewhere else, but I don't know if that's actually happening or not. I had heard a rumor that they were going to be in like the Manchester hardware building at some point, but I think there was some changes. We ended up buying that, and some other plans maybe got patched as a result. But yeah, finding anything you can find out and bring back to inform some future initiatives. All right, let's talk about the school bus. Just John, you want to give us an update on what happened with that?
Well, I mean, the basic problem, no matter what the attitude of this school department is towards electrification of the fleet or the private company's fleet using electric battery vehicles. The problem was that we just got in at the 11th hour and it was too late for them to really consider it. I'm not sure it would have made a difference if we were there on time or, a few weeks earlier, but it took us a while to talk amongst ourselves and meet. And I had spoken with Dale, I don't know how you pronounce, anybody know how to pronounce that? Doron at the bus transportation business services person.
Yeah, Dale. I think
anyway, Dale. I spoke to her right after our last meeting. I think it was like the 1st of March or roughly. And at the time she told me she was willing to review language. At the time she told me that the bid language, the bid document was supposed to be, the goal was to have it done by the end of the month. So we got our feedback to them by the end of the month, but somehow before the end of the month, I don't know, it was like the 24th or 3rd or something. But they proceeded on a faster schedule than they anticipated, which is unusual. It was too late. So,
right.
But they continue to cite, Dale wrote us back after we had a committee authorized email to them after our special meeting, in which we proposed 2 things, which is pretty much, all else being equal, would they give preference to proposals that included electric vehicles? That was just a brief summarization of that language. And the second was about the option to have the vendors, I can't remember now, vendors to list an option for an electric van in the,
if the city somehow purchased it.
Oh, that's it. That's, yeah.
If we would provide the driver for it.
Yes, right. If we were able to get it through a grant or work out some other arrangement, would the company who's bidding provide an hourly rate, administrative fee, whatever, for covering that bus or that van? And so we talked about that, and we didn't think that would be scare off the competition, or not scare off the competition, but dampen competition, because no one had to respond to those things. But the letter from Dale continued to indicate that they were very concerned about any provisions dampening the competition. And I guess there hasn't been as much competition as they'd like to see recently in bus bids.
So, given the nature of the school budget battle that's been going on, I think there's very, very large concern about, making sure those costs can be kept as low as possible, because there is like an increase happening with the school budget. And that's been, subject of some major conversations and back and forth with the school committee and council. So I'm sure that's, at the front of mind for them, is making sure that there's not a penny more in that school bus budget than there needs to be. So I get that. And also to your point, John, we did come in, late to this. They'd already been, we didn't know when the contract was up.
Right.
We realized that when we brought it to them, it was big, oh, we're doing this immediately. And now we're at the beginning of a new 3-year cycle, probably, with that contract.
Right.
And this is complicated. It is sort of new horizons for schools and buses to be doing this. There are some places that are out ahead of it, and other places where it's really not on the radar. So at the very least, what we're doing right now is we're able to sort of get it on their radar, right? As something that is an option and something that should be considered, something that could have positive ramifications for the city and the schools, for air quality, all those things. So
I'm wondering what we can do for 2 years and 6 months from now to remind ourselves to be present at the earlier in the process for the next time the contract renews,
right?
Or whether they'll think to ask the EAC. It's I can envision the same thing happening next time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
What we have heard from prior experience of other communities and other parties ordering electric buses is that it's a close to 2-year process from start to finish. And that I think they had said it was 9 to 12 months off between an order of an electric bus and a delivery. So then all the planning and decision-making and financial, arrangements that are needed to lead up to the purchase or grants or whatever, add on that time. And if it's granted to the city, then we've got to figure out a way to make our contractor adjust to that, work that into the contract. So it could be a long lead time. And I think, it's on the radar, but I think we need to continue if we believe that this is a big element of, greenhouse gas emissions of concern in energy use of concern in the city, that we should keep up with it and see how these other pilots are going, other projects are going. Some of the information that Jamie and Connie sent along last week or so about Connie had done research about other schools. I came across Amherst. You were right. Amherst, city of Amherst was getting some kind of grant for a bus. Mm-hmm. And there, I happened to follow some of the strands of threads there and looked at an state evaluation of a pilot program began back in 2015 with Amherst and some other towns. And it actually had pretty mixed results. The communities that were participating, 2 out of 3, I can't remember, I think it was Cambridge, Amherst, and another town. 2 out of 3 were, in the end, were positive that they, believed in it. It was worth working out the kinks and going forward. But there was quite a lot of downtime with those buses, and problems in getting them serviced and repaired. And the charging systems were very complicated, and managing the charging systems were critical.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting report, because they also talked about the fact that they hadn't done enough training for people to know how to fix them. Yeah. So they were just stuck because nobody knew what to do when they weren't working.
Yeah.
So maybe it's good that we're postponing this, because maybe in 3 years' time, a lot of those things will be ironed out as well, Yeah. But yeah, it is something, if we're interested in, I don't think it's a question of waiting for the next time around as much as trying to really get as much information as possible and then start talking about how we could make it happen and whether it's really viable, whether we can make it happen, because they're very expensive, those buses.
Yeah, well, that's where I think it's great that, John was able to have that conversation with Highland. That's that. I'm not going to sit here and say, private industry is the answer to everything here, but to have a company like that can own and service and is doing this and replicating things in multiple places, that goes a long way towards every community having to sort of learn things on their own. Number one.
Well, what I was trying to understand, John, from looking at the materials online, whether or not some of the infrastructure money that's going to be floating down from the federal government is available for these private companies who are providing these bus services to cities and towns, whether they are eligible for help buying electric buses. I thought there was a hint about that, although I wasn't sure whether that would be the case, because that's the answer in truth. These companies need to be the ones who are buying these buses, not the cities.
Right. And there are incentives already in place or something like that, but it'd be interesting to see what new things are coming, from the legislation, from these, renewed calls for, deepening the electric infrastructure for vehicles, as well as, the things that those companies are doing, which is they're aggregating this battery power that they can put back onto the grid, right? There's this arbitrage sorts of opportunities that they have as well to say, okay, we've got this whole fleet and we know that at certain times they're not going to be used, so we can make that, that.
And so should we be talking to whatever company gets the contract?
Yes, that was, exactly what I was thinking. When we should follow up and find out who wins the award, and then that's, we should, have that conversation, maybe even invite them to a meeting to come and talk to us, about this. What do you know? What are you thinking of as a company around the future of this? Because depending on the company, maybe they're forward thinking, maybe they're not, maybe they're just going to ride, diesel buses into the ground until they're forced not to, or maybe they are thinking ahead of like, what could we do that's a little more forward thinking, that's a little more ahead of the curve.
The representative from Highland Electric Transportation that I spoke with said they'd be happy to do a short presentation for any body in the committee or body in the city who would like to hear from them and talk with them directly. And that could be helpful clarifying some of the issues that we've seen come up in the discussing with the school department in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and again, whatever company gets the Easthampton contract is almost assuredly going to have other contracts, right? Whether it's the current one now that's like Easthampton, Northampton, and some others. So it's not just going to be, like they have 7 buses, 8 buses that are servicing our town. It's going to be they're going to have a whole fleet, and they're going to be doing a regional or even broader kind of thing. So that if we can broker that conversation and push that for from the Easthampton standpoint and have it benefit some other areas, then even better.
Well, I volunteer to keep on top of it and try to put together some kind of long-term game plan and talk, with whoever else on this committee wants to work on that in between.
Okay. Yeah, I think, at the very least, following up with Dale, and I know actually, I think she may be leaving her post with the school sometime soon.
Oh, really?
Maren may know that for sure. I did hear something that this was her last like school budget that came up in the school committee meeting last week.
Yeah, we'll be hiring a new business director hopefully soon.
Okay, so
we'll see.
John, did you read the Thomas, the Thomas built buses article that I sent?
I think I did.
They talk about, their article talks about all this money that is available for buying, or will be available for buying electric buses. And according to them, for-profit companies would be eligible. So.
Okay, I'll check into it.
Yeah. So it's follow up with them, make sure that we know when the contract is awarded, like who it goes to, and then the outreach process to that group.
I was doing some digging similarly about this and what is out there. There was a newsletter that went out through, I think it's the Clean Cities Coalition.
Right, yeah.
And one of the things, so there's this rebate, EPA is doing some kind of rebate program for school buses, but like you said, I don't know if it's available for commercial enterprises or not, or if it's just for cities. And then the other thing that I saw was that there is this, it's called ACT, and it's basically can help towns do planning for electrification. So maybe that is maybe a better place to start, because the rebate program starts in April, end of April. So it sounds like I'm behind the curve in terms of we could do it through a third party, and we're getting a contract now situated. So it sounds like we're not in the position to be like buying buses. But yeah, it was interesting. There's other things out there. And then the other things that I saw, and I went to that webinar on vehicle to grid energy, and it was just really cool. That would be something that would be so cool if we could figure out how to implement here, because it just seemed like a win-win. But they were talking about using them for like emergency energy sources, like when there's a blackout, you have a mobile bus and that has a big battery on it, you could take to where you need it to be. And I don't know, it just sounded really cool. but yeah, I guess it sounds like it's future. Yeah.
Another idea for a grant, to get someone to come in and advise about all of this stuff for us and look into what options.
That's what that ACT program was. So we can look into that more. And
also the green communities, I think that might be a grant we could get through the green communities as well.
Yeah, and so I'd like to see the latest grant document, or for whenever we're ready to go for one again, because it lists out all the things that you can try to apply for. And it's a long list. And a lot of them are for, actionable things like putting in new, fixing facilities so that they're more, green or more efficient. But there's other ones that you can kind of, if you're willing and able to go for it, can be a little more creative. So I need to see what the latest document says on what.
Not out yet. It hasn't been released yet.
I don't think. Well, I don't know if the one for this latest grant period has come out or not yet. We weren't going for it, so I haven't looked out to find it. It might be out, but even so, if it's getting updated, then it's worth a look. So I can try to see what I can find.
Could you send a link to us? Because I tried to find a list like that and I just couldn't find it. It would be great to be able to just look at it.
Yeah, I can see if I can find that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Along with the act, I mean, the what was it, Clean Cities newsletter that you just spoke of?
Yep, I can send
it. Is that readily available off of a website, or do you have to be a member, sign up or something?
I don't know. I got and that reminds me of another thing. So I just am signed up somehow from some previous person for this Clean Cities Coalition. So I can send that one newsletter I got that had all these things listed. Okay. That'll be easy to send. And then I also signed up. There was a newsletter, but I think it was specifically for the EPA's bus rebate program. I signed up for that too. I can send that link. Will be in there. So
okay,
that'd be cool. But yeah, I'll definitely send that along, and then I will look for the new updated grant document. See what I can find.
Thanks, Cassie.
No problem.
Okay, well, certainly lots of potential ideas, and I think we have some good things kicking around for when we can start to move forward on some of that. And again, I think Scott, to your point, like, right, let's make sure that we're staying on this bus thing. Let's not have it drop off the agenda, and let's keep it moving so that it can be in front of mind. I was struck a little bit in Dale's response that she sent to John, to the language that we sent over, that I mean, really there's a lot of education that just hasn't happened for them. Like it's just like kind of a black hole of like, well, we're intrigued by this idea, but we don't really know anything about it, and we don't know that we could trust it, and we don't, it's not something we're willing to take on right now. So there's definitely some education kind of on that side that needs to happen.
Is Marin's on the school committee?
He is.
Is that right? What about an eventual, basics of electrification of bus presentation to the school committee someday? Maybe we're a year away from that, knowing enough to be able to do that, but maybe in a year we know enough to make a presentation to them. And it seems to me that they're going to be critical in gaining the support and making a decision about, do you risk the finances, or is this going to be a winner, a financial winner or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. Again, I think it just has to be in the context that the transportation contract is, set up in a way that we don't own buses.
Right.
And we are contracting now upwards of 12 buses for our residents, for our students. So, but yeah, in that context, I think certainly if we had a presentation that we wanted to bring to the committee, that's something we could look at doing.
Great. Okay, move on to the last couple things here. The Honeywell Rfp remains here on the agenda. I don't really have an update since the last time that the mayor told me there's undergoing a reevaluation of some of the things in there. So they brought in another company to help them look at that and evaluate. So that's still ongoing as far as I know. I'll make a note for myself to just check back in on that over the course of the next couple of weeks and see where that is, because it's obviously a lot of projects, potential projects in there that relate to what we're talking about here. And again, maybe some stuff that folds back in on some other grant opportunities or some of these other buildings that the city owns and things that maybe would make sense. We've talked through a few social media posts here that would go around the Teslas and some of these other pieces with the aggregation. So we have some ideas coming up there. Under new and other business, I teased a little something earlier, just something that occurred to me while I was thinking through some stuff, which is around community solar, which is, before aggregation, community solar is a way that anybody, that whether they've got, if they can't do solar on their house, especially a way that people, renters as well as owners, can participate in renewable energy and purchase renewable energy directly. And so it's something that I do personally. I wasn't sure if maybe there's something like a workshop or a webinar or something that we could do that would just help people understand what it is and what the process is, and that it's something that's available to them, that they could do right now. You know, we're lucky to be in a state where community solar is pretty active, and there's lots of projects and more going in, and you know, there's capacity for people to sign up. And there are specific programs too that even focus on low income customers and have mandates to target, you know, certain people, different parts of the economic spectrum. So it occurred to me that whether it be something that a member, somebody from the committee would do, or maybe we'd bring in like an outside party to talk about the process and just like make it available, and then, you know, see if we can put it out there for people to sign up to come learn, or even just, you know, do some posts about it, potentially like, hey, this is something that you could do right now, and basically, you know, support 100% renewable energy and save 10% on your energy bill at the same time, because you do get like a 10% discount / bonus for signing up for community solar on an ongoing basis. So figured I'd throw that out there.
You have to educate me about community solar. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay,
so community solar projects are you know, owned by somebody, an IPP or a developer, you know, and they basically sell.
Okay, you're not talking about one specific company. You're talking about all of the companies that.
All of them, yeah. There's many.
Okay. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, what you just suggested, just letting people know it's out there.
Yeah. Do we think, you know, people think it would be something that we would want to do as an active sort of like seminar, webinar type thing, or just as like a post or two that we would put out there somehow?
Both.
Both.
Both, but I think it's liable to be intimidating enough for people that just a Facebook post isn't going to really move them to take action. So something that's a little more informative and encouraging, like a webinar or an event. You know, feed them ice cream if they show up in person.
Right.
I think that would be more have bigger results.
You know, Arcadia
Guys,
is very happy to. I'm sorry, Marion. It's always very happy to lend their space for stuff like this. Just so you know.
Okay. Marion, what was your?
Yeah, so my company works in this area, so I've both got to be a little careful in terms of conflict of interest, but also just to give a little bit of knowledge on it. You know, in Eversource West, where we are, Old Wamiko, there's really not new community solar coming on board right now. So I don't think there's a huge amount of availability. And so I think that we'd need to be careful about putting forward an education campaign on something that might not have a lot of availability for customers to be able to do. Okay. But then we'd also just need to be really careful about presenting an idea would also, you know, how do we link up then with, if there are companies that are offering it right now, and getting, you know, just having to be careful about sponsoring a company, you know, some of the different ones that are out there and doing it. So, I mean, it's a great, I mean, it's, like I said, it's what we do. One of the products that we sell in my company, but there really is not much in Eversource West that I know of. So I think that, I don't know how valuable it would be to engage that kind of level of education, because it is a little confusing. People don't understand why you're just getting savings. And while it's really valuable, it's just not very available right now in the West.
Okay. Well, that's certainly worth looking into more, and I can, you know, take on some of that. And if Marion, if you have specific, you know, any information to point to on that, that'd be useful. I do know, right, there things do get subscribed and then you know, they're closed, right? So, and there may not be that much currently. I was looking at New York recently, and New York is like going crazy with community solar. There's like, no matter where you live, there's like 20 projects that you can sign up for.
Oh, wow.
But they've also making a big push in, like, you know, Massachusetts with the ups and downs of the SMART program and things like that. Things are kind of like, you know, accordion, expanding and contracting, and there's not always as many new projects happening. but certainly, yeah. And Maren, to your point, like, it was definitely in my mind that we don't want to be in a position of promoting a specific company, to the extent that we could have it done by sort of a disinterested, third party that's just more about education and awareness versus, hey, sign up for this through my company for this specific project. Again, that's maybe why it would make sense for a member of the committee to just sort of present some information on how it works and get some things in there, talk generally and how you would go about doing that.
I wish there was a way to, like in the academic world, too much we overuse surveys, but a way to survey the community just to get the temperature, gauge the level of interest before we went down any kind of rabbit hole, just to see what maybe where the lines are divided, whether people, are you interested in community solar? Do you know what community solar is? Those kinds of things. Just to have a better idea of what the community as a whole might be willing to engage in, so we'd know better where to focus those efforts. But I don't, off the top of my head, I just can't think of a good way to, beyond the Facebook thing. Right.
Yeah, this is the constant challenge of our age right now. So how do you get maximum exposure to things and response to things, and get the information that you want? It's definitely an open question. I do think it's useful to try to find out some of that, try to get some of that demographic info. Again, especially, I'm sure most homeowners, especially if they have an advantageous, roof disposition, have been barraged by solar companies over the past few years. But renters and other folks that can't do solar, maybe less so, and maybe they're those are the people that can be more easily targeted for something that's like, oh, I didn't realize this was an option, that's something I could do. Right. I've got too many trees, or I rent, and like what, and then if you rent, it can move with you and all that too. So right. Yeah, so it would be interesting to try to delve into some of that, how much of our community falls into these different buckets and how we could best reach them.
I mean, if you think that would be useful just in general too, in other projects, I'm happy to, comb through some census data and see what I can come up with by way of demographics and, and pull some stuff together. If you wanted just sort of a broad stroke of, here's what the community kind of looks like, and here's where we think we might be able to have an impact, a greater impact with some of these projects, and how to kind of market them.
I think that would be good. And I think, back to the thing with like the Columbia Gas settlement money, where we're looking at, trying to target some of those things too. It could be useful in that context, right? We want to put together a program that's going to target, heat and efficiency improvements that maybe goes into the rental markets or to multifamily buildings, versus to just like straight homeowner assistance, or even again, like a technical assistance program that's going to help, providers learn how to talk about this stuff. That demographic info could be useful. So yeah, Misty, if you're able to find some things and put together, and then maybe we can consider, getting a survey out there, or, again, putting together a basic presentation ourselves that we could market and start to collect that information from those who attend as well, right? We get 10 or 15, 20 people to come talk to us. Like, what do you know about this? What do you want to know about this?
Yeah, and we might be able to just look at it too and find some pain points, like where, so we know going into a project, like, hey, okay, here's where some of the fissures might happen, or where some of the pain points might be for some of the stuff we might want to do.
Mm-hmm. It might be worth partnering with some other committees in town to think about what are the issues that people care about, and so maybe partnering with housing affordability also, and energy, and that way people who might not be thinking about energy but are thinking about affordable housing, they're wanting to participate in this particular survey, and so that's an opportunity for us to gather data on a variety of different issues. But we're working in tandem with some other committees in town about the issues that they're concerned about within the city, et cetera. And then that is actually provides us a variety of different information that it might be worth exploring if there's some other committees that want to kind of think about that, and then we can work together.
I like that idea. All right. Well, I will look around and see if there's like an obvious, company or partner or something that's like sort of like not somebody who's directly selling solar that maybe we could reach out to, or I could reach out to think about what we could do, and if not, then maybe something we could do internally that we could then put out there for the public consumption. Looking at some of these other committees, whether it's housing or agriculture, or some of these others that maybe would be interested in partnering to get some information that would help us. That's a good idea. Do you know, Connie, specifically like who with housing, like who reach out to? I'm sure I can look up who it is, but
I know I used to sit on that committee, so I can reach out and ask them if that's something that they would be interested in.
Okay.
And connecting with, and then if they are, then I can connect you.
That'd be great.
Just remember that Misty, or I think it was Cassie earlier, said she was going to look into, didn't you, Cassie, into the statistics on renters versus owners, home ownership in the city, and some kind of a profile like that?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And I don't know if Misty, you have like a source for that information. I was just going to see what I could find on the internet, but I didn't know if there's anything, obviously from like official sources, like government sources. But yeah, I was going to find that for that heat pump plan thing that I'm working on with Northampton.
Okay.
I think it would also be really interesting if there were a way to find out how many Eversource customers are buying their electricity from a third party. And I assume only Eversource knows that and might not be willing to tell us, but
I was involved with a group that tried to get that information from them a couple of years ago, and they wouldn't tell us. And
that doesn't surprise me.
Okay, well, Cassie and Missy, you can coordinate maybe any information that you all find, or work together to try to figure out where the best sources for that information would be.
Great, Cassie. I was just going to start with some census data.
Right.
And if you have other things that you find in your treasure chest, I'm open to help you comb through it. So you're taking on all these things. I'm happy to help you do it.
Okay, cool. No, that sounds really good. I was planning to start really looking at it in earnest tomorrow, so I'll just start sending you an email, whatever.
Yeah, and maybe I can scoop you to sort through what you're doing to look at like the green communities. I'd be looking at some grant lists, and I can share that with John, because John expressed some interest in combing through some of that as well.
Okay. All right, cool.
Awesome. We've all given ourselves a decent amount of homework here. Anything else that anybody has, new or other things to bring up?
I have two little tiny things. Well, one, I was curious whether the person who joined the call wanted to speak, having missed public speak at the beginning, so we could offer that opportunity.
Yeah. Lydia,
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm okay. I just wanted to listen. Thank you, though.
Well, welcome.
Appreciate it.
The other thing, I was on the EAC's Facebook page and found that there were, I think I was answering a recent message and then realized that there had been a message from months ago from somebody trying to reach the committee. And it made me realize that there is no way on the city's website for people to contact any of, well, our committee at least, and it looks like probably the other committees as well. So I wanted to find out whether that's in fact the case, and if so, maybe we should set up an email alias or something so that as a city committee, if folks want to communicate to us, we should make that easier than them having to stalk us on Facebook and send a message that we don't see for 8 months.
Are we eligible for the government Easthampton email, or is that only for elected officials?
It would make sense to me for them to be able to just set up an alias and it could forward to everyone on the committee or the chair of the committee or something. Just, you know, a simple, like not even an email mailbox, just an alias.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Connie, what do they do? What did they do when they set up your email address? Does that go to, do you have to go into a separate email for the stuff that's sent to you through your easthampton.gov?
Yeah, it's a Gmail account. So,
but it doesn't get sent to your regular email. That's just like you have like two. You just have a separate account. It's a Gmail account, and I know it says easthampton.gov, but it's a Gmail. Right.
And it's by Google.
The city set it up for you, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wonder if they would just set that up for us. I don't know how that.
Yeah, would I reach out to Karen about that? Would she be?
Karen, yep.
Karen, sorry. Okay. Scott, I'll ask about that because Karen's who I go to get the Zoom links and stuff already.
Great.
Then maybe the city would be able to put that contact info like on the website as well.
That'd be great.
I think it's a good idea as a general policy that like the committee should be able to be reachable more readily.
Right.
Transparent government and all that. Okay, great. Anything else from anybody?
Mm-hmm.
All right, our upcoming committee meeting dates were on the agenda, but fourth Monday, April 25th will be the next meeting. I'll have some updates up prior to the city council next week when we do the aggregation presentation again. If anybody wants to swing by and join that in support or just watch what's going on, feel free. And otherwise, we got a lot of things to dig into and report back on for next time. All right, get a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I second.
All right, thank you, Misty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're all good. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time, and we will see you in April.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.